And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Catacombs cubes. Now, Catacombs is a dexterity dungeon crawl game that when it came out, kind of was just a sleeper hit. It grew and grew. It's one that people really enjoy. A game where you flick to go through a dungeon, which sounds like it should not work, but it does. This is in the same universe, but has pretty much nothing to do with that other game. In this one, you're building buildings made out of cubes. And so you're going to build these buildings that are in various shapes and then put them in a town trying to score points. Here's how it plays. In this game, players are going to be building a town, which is going to have different buildings that are placed in it, and when a town reaches a certain size, the game will end, and that size is based on the number of players. Each player here is going to pick one of these builders, and you're either going to start with one of three different coins, or all three of these coins actually, or with a certain number of building blocks as the game goes by. So let's say maybe everyone will pick the same side, so I might start with those two building blocks. Each player is also going to get a residence building, randomly given, that they can build throughout the course of the game. Players are going to take turns, and the architect on their turn is going to roll the dice. You're then going to put the dice together, matching the colors that are rolled, and you can put them here in any order that you want. Now, players can spend coins to do things like switch dice if they want to, or take a resource of their choice. But let's assume no one does that. The person who puts the dice here is going to pick last. After each other person will pick a pair of these dice, and you will either get the blocks that are shown on them. So this shows different blocks here. This one lets you do a certain action. There's one of the actions which basically lets you take a block of your choice. And there are various blocks that are available that you can see up here. All sorts of blocks. Obsidian here is the most common block because it's just the one cube. And there are blocks that let you chisel off one. So for example, if I take this block here, I could chisel off part of this and take this block instead, for example. You're kind of cutting away part of the block. Instead of taking a set of these dice and doing the actions on them, players can build one of the buildings. If they do so, then a pair of these dice go away. I should also mention this board is bigger than it needs to be in case you get an expansion. They have room for the 5th and 6th player. And if you don't like using dice, then you can draw tiles. There's a bunch of tiles included that you can use instead of the dice. There are 3 types of buildings that are being built in this game. Each player has their own residence that they can build. You can build one of these 4 buildings here. This just shows you what's coming next. Or you can have this communal palace that you're building. Building in the palace requires you to either spend one of these tokens to put a piece in the palace, or to use one of these sides of dice to put a piece in the palace. And when you put whatever piece you put in the palace, you're also going to move up on this track here. It's showing that you helped in the palace. Some of it's going to give you victory points, and some is going to give you some of these obsidian cubes that you're going to use. And when the palace is completely finished, then the second palace will be available, and you'll start building that one here. Now, when you build any building, you can build it any way you want. You'll see that on the building itself, it shows how many points it's worth, a bonus it will give you if you finish it, how many total blocks are in it, the shape of it, and then above shape, and it shows you. So for example, this one could be built like this. It could be built with that, like that, and like that. That's one way. It could also be built like this. There are a lot of different ways that this particular building could be built. I suppose it could be built like this too. Anyhow, you have to use the pieces that you have in your construction yard that you've been collecting. When you do that, though, you can keep your black cubes, but the rest of the pieces that you haven't used get thrown away. So you got to be careful. You want to be as efficient as you possibly can. The pieces that you used also go away. Then you'll take the building that you built. If it's one of these communal ones, you'll replace it with one that someone else can build. And then you'll add it to the town, putting it in the grid, putting it on the building side up. Now when you connect it, you're going to get arrows. Here will give you a reward. If the arrows are different colors, you pick one of the rewards. So here I can take a black cube or a red coin. But if they are the same kind of arrows, so let's say later on I managed to, let's see here, I put some, you're going to have to put everything together kind of in the same way, but let's say I put 2 reds together, then I would get 2 red coins. Coins are useful. You can use them. They're going to let you build into the castle. You can break off a block that you have, and then you get to keep the extra black cube. And so there are a variety of things that you can do. One of them lets you move a block from here. So if I have, like, let's say a big block here, I want to keep it, I can move it up here so that those blocks are preserved when you build a building. You can keep them for the future turns. And so that's what coins are going to be used for over the course of the game. If you build your residence at any point, you're going to put your building of your color there, and then you'll get bonuses when other people build next to it. That's pretty much it. Players are going to keep going until the grid is finished. Once the grid is finished, whoever has the most points is the winner. You'll get points for having helped contribute to the palace. You get points for building different buildings, and there are a lot of these different buildings. Remember, when you build a building, you might get a bonus too, like a bonus block or something, and whoever has the most points is the winner of the game. One of the problems with the game is, not problems I guess, but it's called Catacombs Cubes and has nothing to do with Catacombs. It has some of the same characters maybe that you'll see, but this universe doesn't really matter in that regards. I would have called it a completely different name myself. The wooden cubes here are really well done. They're very good quality. The tokens are good. I especially like that once you build the stuff, you can turn it over. It looks really good on the other side. There's a lot of different tiles that are included with the game, and they all look like blocks on this side, but when you turn it over, that makes sense. That's kind of how that building would look. And I don't know what it is. I just find this to be really well done. The art is really good. And the symbols are there. I mean, they included all these tiles. This is one thing I wouldn't have done. It's like, if you hate dice, you can use the tiles. Like, well, I guess that's a lot of extra pieces. I didn't think the dice were that bad. Everyone's going to get to go first at one point. You have, this is not one block for the game. This is to show who's first each round. You roll the dice. You pick the order they go in, and then other people can grab them, and you go last. But then you'll get to go last. You'll get to go first on someone else's turn. So it works out well. I think it's just a very nice, well done production. As I said, I really feel it's almost, I think, problematic for the game that it's called Catacombs Cubes, because if you don't like Catacombs, you probably won't look at this, and if you do like Catacombs, you'll look at this, and it's just not the same game at all. It is a nice, light, family-style game about building cubes. If you like sitting there trying to build cubes, it's not puzzly. It looks a little puzzly, but it's not. You just sit there and try to get the right shapes. You don't want to get too many shapes. As you collect them to build the buildings, you can try to build your residence, or you can build one of those buildings out there, but be careful. You might be saving to build a building that someone else will also be building. So there's a little bit of take that to the game. Not too much, but I mean a little bit of take something you want. Knowing when to spend those coins is a big deal. Don't waste them. Use them to switch the die to make the right combo that you want, or to spend them to break a piece up at the right time, or to help contribute to the palace. I like the palace part a lot because as you add to that palace, it doesn't really do anything for you right away, although contributing to a lot can get you bonus points. And there's that kind of ebb and flow. And then the dice drafting itself is nice. You roll the dice, and then each person picks them, and you get them, and it just gets some pieces and build it. It's not a very strong, thinky game. And that sounds negative. I don't mean it to be. But it's the kind of game where I'm like, I collect some pieces. I'm doing some planning ahead. But this is the kind of game that I would play with people who haven't played many games before, also because it's one they could jump into easily. And it has a really good visual effect there on the table. I say roll some dice, collect the blocks, use those. People are fiddling around trying to build their thing. And when you finish something, it just has this very satisfying done. And then when you put it in the grid, as the town grows, that also looks really satisfying. So Really cool little game. Like I said, I think the name actually works against it rather than helps it. But either way, the cubes themselves, putting them together to build these cool buildings, is something that we've seen stuff like this done before, but I think this does it in a very accessible, well put together way that I think a lot of families especially are going to enjoy. Dice Tower Judgment approved!